Mistake 1. Getting their drone killed in the prep phase. You see this all the time in ranked. People will just drive their drone straight into the bomb site, start red pinging defenders, and then their drone will get shot. You never want to do this in Siege. The reason for this is because drones are extremely important later in the round for gathering intel on where defenders are roaming, where they're located in the bomb site, and they can genuinely win you rounds. If you just let your drones die in the prep phase, you're going to have less drones later in the round when you need them most, and you're going to be denying yourself the potential to hide your drones during the prep phase, which is what you should typically be doing. You should be driving your drones somewhere near the bomb site or somewhere where you plan on entering the building and hiding it, so that way you can use it when the round starts to gather any sort of information early on. Now, the next mistake, and mistake 2, is not checking for spawn peaks. This is another extremely common mistake. Players will just run out of spawn and then immediately die to a spawn peak and then get mad at the game for it instead of blaming themselves. The way you want to deal with aggressive teams and teams that like to spawn peak is you want to save your drone during the prep phase, drive it outside, and then hide it somewhere in spawn, so that way you can watch the window that the spawn peaker is peeking from. Then you can figure out what window they're peeking and pre-fire them and get a free kill off the round start. But even if you don't have a drone and your drone got shot during the prep phase, you should still be coming out of spawn and aiming at some of the most common windows that people like to spawn peek from, so that way you don't end up spectating for the whole round. Mistake 3, giving Defuser to the wrong person. Players who pick hard breachers, sometimes they'll be nervous to carry the Defuser around because they feel like it's too much pressure. So they'll throw the Defuser down in spawn and then have someone else pick it up instead. However, 9 times out of 10, you don't want to be giving the Defuser out to random people, because if you give your Defuser to someone like an Ash player, they're going to be entering the building first, taking the first early engagements, and you don't want them to die with the Defuser and then donate it to the defense. This is why almost always you want to be giving the Defuser to someone who's a support player. This can range anywhere from your hard breacher to Thatcher, or even an operator like Gridlock. You just want to give it to whatever operator is going to be playing in the back of your attacking line for as long as possible, so that way your Defuser is protected, so it won't end up in the hands of the defense. Mistake 4, not bringing a hard breacher. This happens a lot in solo queue, and it's something that you want to be aware of. A lot of times in solo queue, people will just pick whatever operator they want to play and just hope that the rest of their teammates will pick something useful. So instead of doing that, try to pay attention to what your teammates are bringing and then select the hard breacher if no one's running it. Because if you don't bring a hard breacher, your round is basically screwed from the get-go, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to need some form of hard breach to either get hatches open or to get the walls open so that you can enter the bomb site and get a plant down. Mistake 5, not droning a room before you enter. This is specifically a problem typically in lower ranks. However, it's still worth mentioning here. And that's because many players will just break open a barricade and jump right through because they droned it in the prep phase and think it's clear. However, you should always be droning every room before you enter it, so that way you have information on where any defenders are playing inside that room and whether defenders are in it at all. Because if you don't drone it, you're forcing yourself to dry clear a room, which is going to be a lot more difficult, and it's going to potentially end up getting you killed. And mistake 6 is also related to droning, and that is red pinging on drones. I discussed this in my recent defender mistakes video. However, it still applies here as well, because red pinging on drones is just going to reveal the position of the drone and let the defender know that they're being watched. This is why you should pretty much never be red pinging, because for example, if there's a roamer flanking you and then you red ping them, they're just going to run away from the flank and you're not going to be able to get a free kill on them. However, if you were to instead call out to your teammates and just yellow ping him, you would be able to get a kill on him while he was trying to flank you. So never red ping on your drones, because 9 times out of 10 it's either going to reveal the drone or it's going to cause the defender to rotate away, and you're not going to be able to capitalize on the information you got. Mistake 7, droning too far ahead of yourself. This is typically a problem in somewhat of the middle range of ranks, people in like platinum to emerald. A lot of times they know that they need to drone, and so they'll drone pretty effectively. However, they'll start getting way too ahead of themselves and they'll drone like 4 or 5 rooms ahead. If you drone that far ahead of yourself, if you find a defender, you're not going to be able to act on that information, because by the time you get off your drone and run all the way there, they're most likely going to have rotated. And this can end up in the best case scenario with the defender rotating away and you not being able to get a kill on them, or in the worst case scenario, them being able to rotate into a position that you don't expect and being able to get a free kill on you. So you only want to be droning a few rooms ahead of you, so that way you can always react to the information you're getting. Mistake 8, planting too early. This may seem counterintuitive to many of you. Many of you might think that, oh, the bomb site's clear, I need to put the plant down ASAP. However, if you end up putting the plant down within the first minute of the round and you haven't killed anyone on the enemy team, you're most likely going to lose that post-plant scenario unless you have a perfect line of sight. The reason for this is because defenders can just overwhelm the bomb site, retake it back, and potentially get on the Defuser and stop it if you plant too early. You typically only want to be planting in the bomb site if you have a man advantage or if it's super late in the round. The reason for this is because because if you have a man advantage, it'll be a whole lot harder for the enemy team to retake the bomb site because they won't be able to get as many trades on you, and it'll be harder for fewer defenders to peek into a wide range of angles. So especially if you get control of the bomb site super early in the round, you most likely shouldn't plant, and you should wait until you get a kill or two before putting the plant down. And mistake 9 is also related to planting, and that is planting on a hatch. This is something that a lot of newer players don't realize, but if you plant on a hatch, the defenders, all they have to do is use their shotgun or any sort of explosives to pop open the hatch, and then the diffuser will fall out of the site and they'll instantly win the round. So you pretty much want to avoid hatches like the plague when you plant, and you never want to plant on them. It'll just end up losing you the round 9 times out of 10. Mistake 10, playing far away from teammates. This is something that pretty much everyone struggles with at every rank, but it's something that you want to avoid at all times. When you play too far away from any teammates, if you end up dying, your teammates will not be able to get a trade on you, which means that you're going to be putting your team at a man disadvantage. And it also means that you're not going to have any teammates nearby that can help you take gunfights on multiple defenders at once. So if the defenders figure out that you're by yourself on one side of the map, they can send 2 of their roamers to you to surround you and then get a free kill on you. This is why you always want to be pushing into the building with at least one other teammate, or at least have a teammate droning in for you, so that way you're not completely alone and in the dark. Mistake 11, stacking up too many people on one side of the map. This typically happens in the lower ranks. However, it's something that can be absolutely devastating for your attack. You see this a lot, especially on maps with outside breaches, because teams will just open up the outside breach and then have all 5 players sit on the breach the whole round baiting for kills. This is a horrible way to attack, and you always want to try to separate and have people going on multiple different sides of the map. If you get an outside breach open, having 2 people outside the breach is okay. However, having the whole team outside the breach is bad, because it's going to allow the defenders to freely rotate in the bomb site anywhere that breach can't see, and then it's going to allow the defenders to just sit and wait for you to try to go for an execute, and then they can just dump all their utility onto you, like smoke grenades, Chachanka fire, pop their Goyo canisters, and then you're just going to be losing the round because you're going to have to sit there and wait for all their utility to go away. Whereas instead, if you sit some teammates above to potentially play vertically, it will allow you to plant more safely because the defenders wouldn't be able to rotate as easily, and it would allow your teammates to prevent the defenders from throwing utility at you while you're planting. Mistake 12, not setting up flank watch. Now, this is a mistake that happens a lot in solo queue, and that's just because you're not really communicating with your teammates. However, you always want to be doing this. If you take in map control and you're inside the map, you need to be setting up drones on your flank, so that way if a teammate dies, they can sit on those cameras and tell you if a defender's flanking you. And that's just at a bare minimum. You might also want to set up some claymores on the flank, some air jabs if you have them, or track stingers as well, so that way you can slow the defense as well while they're trying to flank, so that you have more time to react and so that you have an easier time getting a kill on them. A lot of teams, especially in the lower ranks, can have their whole round go down the drain just because one defender got a flank on them. So try not to let that happen to you, and always set up some form of flank watch. Mistake 13, not communicating. Now, I understand some people may not have a mic. However, on attack, especially in ranked, you always want to be communicating. It's a lot easier to get away on defense without talking to your teammates because there's not as much going on. However, when you're trying to make a proper execute on attack specifically, you need to be communicating with your team and giving call outs, letting them know where you're rotating, and just giving them a general idea of what your plan is for the attack. If your team are not communicating with each other and you're just pushing random sides of the map and hoping for the best, you're not going to have a successful attack. So at a bare minimum, you need to be communicating with your team in text chat if you don't have a mic. And if you do have a mic, you need to be communicating as much as possible, especially on attack. Mistake 14, forgetting to shoot default cams. This happens all the time. Even in Champion, I see this, and it's something that can be devastating for your round. A lot of players will run out of spawn and think, oh yeah, my teammates will shoot the default camera, and they won't even think to check. This is a horrible idea and can single-handedly lose you rounds. The reason for this is because if you leave the default cams up outside, it can allow defenders to get information on where your team is planning on pushing, and it can also allow them to potentially get runouts on you. So when you come out of spawn, always check the default cameras. Even if you think a teammate has shot them, always check them. And this even goes for indoor default cams as well. Always make for sure that the default cams near you have been shot, so that way the enemy team has the least amount of intel possible. Mistake 15, sprinting too much. This is something that a lot of entry fraggers suffer with. They'll just start running in the building, even in areas that they haven't droned yet, and they end up getting themselves killed because they're not able to react in time and ADS quick enough to take gunfights on defenders they sprint into. In Siege, you generally never want to be sprinting unless you're in an area of the map that you've already taken over and that you know is clear. Because whenever you're sprinting, your gun is down and your ADS speed is going to be a lot slower. Whereas if you're just to walk around the map ADS, or at the very least just walk normally, you would have a lot easier of a time ADSing and reacting to any enemies you walk into. So generally you want to break the habit of sprinting, and you want to just be ADSing 9 times out of 10, unless you have to rotate a really far distance from one side of the map to the other and you know it's clear. Mistake 16, Sticking to the same strategy repeatedly. This is another mistake I discussed in my defense video. However, I think it applies here in attack as well. The reason why sticking to the same strategy repeatedly is a bad idea is because it allows the defense to react to what you did last round and make changes to their lineup accordingly. So if you won your first attack round and you don't change up the strategy, the enemy team is going to be able to just swap their operators around to counter your strat, and then you're most likely going to lose that round. So try to mix things up every attack, even if it just means swapping out a few operators. Try to mix things up so that way the enemy team can't predict what you're going to do. Mistake 17. Running ACOG too often. A lot of players will think ACOG's the best sight in the game. Let me run this on every gun no matter what. However, there's a lot of situations where ACOG is going to put you at a detriment than it's going to help you. For example, if you plan on playing vertically with an operator like Ram or Buck, a lot of the time an ACOG is going to end up screwing you over more than it's going to help you, because it's going to make it harder for you to see through vertical holes. Also, ACOGs are really bad on maps that are super close quarters. The reason for this is because it makes your FOV way too zoomed in when you're taking gunfights, and so it's a lot harder to take a gunfight on someone when it's super close range. So if you're playing on a map like Skyscraper or Outback, you might want to swap your ACOG out for a 1x sight, so that way you're better equipped for the gunfights at hand. I don't see many people talk about this, but you should be swapping your sights based on what map you're running, so that way you have the best sight for the occasion. So while the ACOG is super good on most maps, you do want to be swapping it out depending on the situation. Mistake 18. Chasing kills. This is another mistake that happens at pretty much all ranks, and this is something that many players, even in the champion skill level, will suffer from. They'll find an enemy, get a few shots on them, and then the enemy will manage to get away and start running. And then they'll just run after that enemy no matter what to try to get the kill. If you end up running after an opponent to try to get a kill, it allows them to potentially get the jump on you, but it also means you might be running into some of their teammates as well, and they might be able to put you in a 2v1 gunfight that you can't win. So generally, you don't want to be chasing after enemies unless you have teammates around you that can assist you. Mistake 19. Having an operator main. This is a problem specifically in the lower to mid-range ranks. However, it's a devastating one. And that's because it means that you're only used to playing one or two operators. If you have an operator main, it's bad for you because it allows the enemy team to ban that operator and then put you in a situation that you can't win. And it means that you haven't learned any other operator. So that way, if you have to play another operator to help your team out, you're going to be completely lost and in the dark. So never have an operator main, and try to play a ton of operators so that way you can open your eyes to how other operators are played, and so that if the enemy team ends up banning your main, you're not completely screwed. Mistake 20. Spectating when you die. This is another mistake that happens on both sides in Siege, and it applies pretty evenly. The reason why spectating in Siege is so bad is because it means that you're missing out on any information that could be on the drones. When you die, you always want to be hopping on your drones or any cameras you have, so that way you can be gathering information that your other teammates won't be able to see, and so that you can call out to your teammates if a flank is happening or if a defender's rotating, so that they can react to that information. So try not to spectate and scroll TikTok when you die, and get on cams. Mistake 21. Not using code Beast in the store. This is a pretty easy one. All you have to do is go to the creator code button in the Siege store, click use creator code, and then type in code Beast in the store. It supports me and I would really appreciate it. Mistake 22. Shooting barricades open. This is something that a lot of players don't even comprehend or realize is a bad thing. However, it's really bad for you. The reason why shooting barricades is bad is because it forces you to reload after you shoot the barricade 9 times out of 10. And if a defender's smart and they know you're shooting open a barricade, they can run out of that barricade and get a free kill on you while you're reloading. So typically you don't want to be magnupping barricades unless it's a far away barricade and you're behind cover when doing it, because it'll allow the defender to get a jump on you if it isn't. Mistake 23. Spending too much time outside. This is a problem, especially on maps like Cafe, because attackers just don't really know how to enter the building. And so they'll just sit outside and sit on rappel the entire match and not actually enter into the building because they're too scared to do so. You need to get into the building in Siege if you want to win your attacks. So try not to waste a ton of time sitting outside and baiting for kills. That means, yes, if you're playing Cali or Glaz and sitting in the spawn on Coastline, you need to be helping your team and not sitting out there the whole round. Mistake 24. Forgetting to clear or put a drone under the bomb site. We've all been there in ranked. You plant in the bomb site and then the enemy team just goes below, nitros you, and the round's over. This is why you always want to send a teammate under the bomb site while you're planting, or you want to have a drone under the bomb site at the bare minimum, so that way someone who's dead can be watching it. This can allow you to react to the enemy team rotating below, and it can allow you to plant in a better position to allow you to survive a nitro cell through the floor. And it can also allow one of your teammates to rotate below and potentially kill the guy while he's trying to nitro you through the floor. So try to always put a drone under the sight so that way you know if someone's going below. Mistake 25. Reloading too often. This is another one of those mistakes that kind of applies to both sides. However, it's important to discuss. The reason for this is because when you reload, the enemy team can hear you doing it, and they can react to you reloading by rushing you and getting a free kill on you. So you only want to be reloading when your ammo is extremely low, like less than 8 bullets or so, and when you're behind cover and you're safe. Because in Siege, you can kill someone very easily with 10 bullets, and it's not Call of Duty. You don't need to be constantly reloading because you're most likely not going to run into gunfights with multiple people super often. So only reload when you're safe and when you absolutely need to. Mistake 26, being scared. This is something that a lot of people struggle with on attack. A lot of people are just extremely scared to push the building or even push into the defenders because they're worried about dying. You need to lose that fear early, because if you stay scared, you're not going to take risks and you're not going to be able to make plays that other attackers would have been able to in the same situation. So try to realize it's just a game and it's not super important. Mistake 27. Vaulting windows without masking audio. If you don't know this, in Siege, when you vault a window, you can shoot to completely mask the sound of you vaulting, so that way the enemy team doesn't know that you did it. This can allow you to catch defenders completely by surprise. And if you don't do this, it's going to be pretty obvious that you're vaulting, and it's going to allow the defenders to pre-fire you. So when you vault a window, always try to unload some of your magazine into like the ground or some random part of the bomb site, so that way the defenders don't know that you vaulted. And the same thing goes for mistake 28, which is dropping hatches without masking audio. You can do the exact same thing when dropping a hatch. If you drop a hatch and you start shooting, it's going to be a lot harder for the defenders to hear you hitting the ground, which means that there's a chance that you'll be able to drop into the bomb site without them even knowing. So generally, you want to try to shoot a few bullets while you're falling, so that way you can mask that audio. Mistake 29, refusing to use utility early. A lot of players, they'll be playing an operator like Capitao or Ying, and they'll refuse to use any of their utility until the team is going for a plant, because they know that their utility is going to be useful for helping to get the plant down or playing the post plant. However, a lot of times they can end up losing you rounds, because there might be situations that come up where a Capitao crossbow bolt or where a Ying Candela would have been extremely useful, but you decided not to use it and instead got some of your teammates killed. So if you see a situation to use your gadget, just go ahead and do it no matter how early the round is, because you never know if you're going to survive to that post plant scenario, and you also can't guarantee that later in the round you'll get utility out of your gadget. And finally, mistake 30, not bringing or placing claymores on runouts. This typically just happens because you or your teammates forget to bring claymores, but this can be absolutely devastating, because if you don't put claymores on windows on a map like Cafe, you're basically just giving the enemy team free kills, because they'll be able to jump out through windows while you're on rappel, get free kills on you, and vault back into the building. If you don't put claymores on runouts, it's going to end up getting you killed, and so you need to be bringing at least one operator with claymores, especially on maps with a lot of runouts like Cafe. And anyways, that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed today's video or found this useful, I make Siege content just like this twice a week, so go subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter if you don't want to miss the next upload. Now, if you want to watch another video just like this one, a video will be popping up on your screen right now that I'm sure you all enjoy. I'll see you next time, friends, and peace.